they have got a bit of a problem with porn and they've tried to quit and they can't, what would your advice be?
Firstly, the problem is not you. The problem is probably the way you've been trying to do it. So lots of people try and quit porn without really understanding what's going on underneath. If you've tried on a number of occasions and failed, then there's almost certainly something a bit deeper going on underneath. And that might be about understanding what's happening neurologically in your brain and recognising that this isn't just about willpower. It's going to take more than that.
Life today is chaotic, unpredictable, and constantly shifting. But within the chaos lies opportunity, and we're here to seize it. This is Generation Uncharted. Dr. Paula Hall, thank you so much for joining me on Generation Uncharted. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, I had to have you because if there's one topic that keeps coming up on this podcast, and we're not looking for it, it just seems to come up in different conversations from relationship experts to dating experts, it's this problem people have with porn. Now, I was looking at some figures before this interview, and the NHS is seeing a rise in cases of young men addicted to porn who are suffering erectile dysfunction. Online searches for porn addiction are surging, overtaking those for alcohol addiction by nearly 2.5 times. And one study has found that 5% of respondents are saying that pornography is more stimulating than actual sexual intercourse with a partner. So I have to kick off by just asking you, are we sleepwalking into a sexual crisis?
I guess it depends how you define crisis, but yeah, I mean, certainly my experience as a psychotherapist is that we are seeing more and more and more people coming to us for help, either because of sexual difficulties that, as you say, get related to pornography, difficulties getting into a relationship, difficulties maintaining a relationship, relationships breaking down, but also friendships as well. Actually, I'm finding myself stuck in front of a computer screen looking at porn rather than going out with mates. And I suppose one thing that's different in this compared to most of the other mental health issues that you might discuss on this program is this is predominantly men. And at the moment, we have little or no education on the subject. So just to get it out there right now, I'm not anti-porn. I'm not saying thinks we should completely ban all pornography and it's some terrible, horrible thing. But I think like alcohol, we recognize that alcohol comes with all sorts of problems and issues if we're not able to control it. And I think as a society, we need to start recognizing porn in a similar kind of way.
Well, I couldn't agree more. And actually, I think that more and more, it's maybe not has penetrated into the mainstream yet, but more and more, I am seeing discussions on other podcasts and other YouTube channels of this problem that seems to be bubbling away with porn. So I guess my question to you is, what are the symptoms and where is that line between someone that may, like we were talking about with alcohol, may have a healthy use of porn to something that is actually a little bit more of an issue? What symptoms should people be looking out for?
And I think that's the challenge, isn't it? Because with alcohol, we can say if you're drinking more than so many units per week, we have in the UK, we have this recommended guideline. So it's much, much easier to measure, whereas with pornography, it's different. And of course, it varies at different stages of life. If you're young, you're single, pornography is your preferred sexual outlet, then fine. I mean, in terms of symptoms, it's really about the impact it's having on you. If you are noticing that there are negative consequences as a result of your porn use, so as I was saying earlier, you're spending less time with friends, you're letting people down on commitments, you're beginning to be late for things, you're not turning in work on time or studies on time, it's causing friction within your relationships, it's costing you money because you've kind of escalated to the webcam sites perhaps, and you're spending more money on this. That's when it's a problem. So in many respects, with anything, it's only a problem when it's a problem. Down to the individual to kind of go, you know what, this is getting in the way of other things that are important in my life. I think the other real distinguishing criteria, and a lot of people don't really get this, but if you are struggling with your porn use, you will get this, is it's not fun anymore. You're just not enjoying it anymore. And people find that who have problems with alcohol, they're drinking just because they're drinking. They're drinking just because it's the evening. They're drinking just because they're awake, whatever. They're just drinking because they drink. If you're just looking at porn now because you're looking at porn and you don't even find it that stimulating anymore, then chances are you've got a problem.
I think that there is a meme like that I've seen. It's something like, I probably quote it wrong, but it's something like, "Are you watching porn because you enjoy it or because you need the dopamine fix?" And I think that people are more and more aware now of how they're abusing their dopamine circuits, particularly in this situation. So one of the
Yeah,
things that has come up, which is sort of a new term, which is this PIED, which is porn-induced erectile dysfunction. How does that happen? Why does that happen? What can someone do about it? Like, what are the phases of it?
yeah. So, in terms of the scientific research behind this, we kind of know it's a phenomenon because so many people are reporting it, but we don't really under the mechanisms why. So one of the explanations might be that pornography is far more stimulating than any regular partner or partner sex can be. Obviously, you've got that immediate biofeedback loop that you can, a bit of fast, a bit whatever. Not sure what time of day this is going out, Lewis, when people are going to hear this, or if they're in company. But you
I'll
know what
bleep
I'm saying.
anything terrible out, but we can be honest.
So yeah, you can adjust your style if you are pleasuring yourself. Do that quite so easily with a partner. And also, of course, pornography gives us ultimate novelty and variety. Yeah, we click new picture, new image, new one, new one, and you can actually find that is going to stimulate you far more than perhaps the type of partner you're likely to get, someone who might be out of your league or whatever. So you can get a level stimulation and arousal from pornography that probably isn't possible from partnered sex. So one of the ideas is that your body becomes so used to that high level of arousal, really high stimulation, that partner sex simply can't match it. But there are other explanations, which are that if you are using pornography very, very heavily, you hit something called the refractory period. So actually, you need more time for your body to kind of calm down before you're able to have sex again. And another explanation is actually that it comes from feelings of guilt or shame. You haven't had sex with your partner for ages, even though they've been nagging you for it, but you've been using pornography. So then when it does come to having sex, you're thinking, right, I've got to make sure it's good. I've got to make sure this, I meet the expectations, whatever. And actually, it's those feelings of kind of guilt and shame that get in the way. And we know that if you start worrying about an erection, you can pretty much guarantee you're not going to get one. Yeah, it's an automatic system. It's a classic. You get erections when you really don't want them in the most embarrassing of places, and you don't get them when you really do need them. So it may be that actually it comes from performance anxiety. But like I said at the start, what we know is it is definitely a phenomenon that is linked in one way or another to pornography. And to go to your second question, and how can you overcome it? Well, cut back on your porn use is the very obvious answer to that. Get back in touch with your body so you're not so used to that kind of physical, mental stimulation you're getting on the screen. Get back into your body so you're enjoying your body, you're enjoying physical awareness, and cut back on the.
What role does age play in this? Because if I think of, and I'm talking very stereotypically now, of what ages might be. So if your wife is maybe going through the menopause, maybe the sex is depleting, so you use porn as a substitute. Maybe if you've just had a baby. I mean, if you can find time to even watch porn, good for you, or have sex. But then obviously a lot of this is being talked about as young people. This is a young people. So how do those ages impact how likely they are to experience this porn-induced erectile dysfunction? Is it quicker to heal your brain if you're older and you weren't exposed to this? I guess my next follow-on question is going to be about young people. If they're growing up with this, they might not
Yeah.
know any different. They might get to sort of 25, 30 and just think, well, this is just how it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Generally, we accept that younger people heal, get better, get over things quicker than older people. But the thing that's different with porn is that most older guys over the age of, and of course the age keeps going up and up, over the age of 40, 45, masturbated without porn. Yeah, they remember
Mm.
life without a smartphone. They remember when they didn't have access to this. Their bodies remember, psychologically they remember. They don't have any question over, is it possible to masturbate without porn? Is it possible to enjoy sex without porn? For many, many years that they have. Whereas for younger guys, often there's been no physiological experience of that and no psychological experience either. So it does seem to be that for younger guys, it does take longer to recover because there's a whole kind of mind shift that has to happen as well.
So this was going to be my next question about recovery, because I'm assuming a lot of people that will probably find this interview and this video on YouTube are going to come here because they have a problem with porn. So with regard to the younger people that have this problem, because as you're saying, the older people, their brains sort of remember what life was like before porn, so if they cut it out, probably better. But if you have been doing this your whole life, there are people that are going to be able to cut out porn, fine, and say, okay, I've got a problem, right, I've stopped the problem, but then still not be able to perform because actually they have created in their head idea of it's got to look like it did in the porn, maybe, or that it's all about visual rather than sensation. So how do you heal from that? So in one sense, you could realize porn was a problem and you can cut out the porn in the same way you could cut out alcohol, but then there is still issues with getting back to a healthy place.
I mean, it takes time is the short answer to that. There's no quick fix to this. They reckon that for people to really begin to move on from this, you need at least sort of 6 weeks, 10 weeks away from pornography before you can begin to kind of get rewired, as it were. But I think the critical thing is not just to wait. It is to be kind of active in that. There's a bit of a saying in the recovery world, which is it's not about what you give up, it's about what you take up. So actually, one of the things I really recommend when I'm working with clients is that they actually begin to teach themselves to learn mindful masturbation. So actually continue to enjoy your body, continuing to touch your body, but you're doing it without pornography. So you're focusing on the physical sensations, you're focusing on that. And it takes a while, but gradually you will learn that actually I really can enjoy my body without porn. And once not only is your body learning that, and I say your body, it's kind of the bit in your brain, it's the map in your brain that's learning that, but obviously psychologically you are as well. So then when you're with a partner, you can go, well, hold on, I managed this absolutely fine on my own last week, so there's no reason not to now. A metaphor that some people find really helpful talking about this is actually to think about food, okay? Bear with me.
Okay.
So if you get used to putting red hot chili sauce on your food all the time, then actually your taste buds kind of begin to just get used to that hot flavour. And gradually you can tolerate more and more of it. It doesn't seem as hot anymore. I put a bit more on, I put a bit more on. And you get used to it. And then what happens is when you just go to have a normal, boring ham sandwich or apple or whatever, it tastes really bland. So a similar kind of thing happens with pornography. You get used to that hot chili sauce sensation all the time. You find you need more and more of it. And ordinary sex can seem very bland by comparison. So what you have to do is cut out the chili sauce and allow time for your taste buds to begin to adjust. But all the time you're eating your ham sandwich wishing there was chili sauce on it, you're not helping. You've got to really focus on eating that ham sandwich, on enjoying that ham sandwich, on getting your tongue around the different textures, the different flavours, whatever, of your ham sandwich. And the more you do that, the quicker you'll begin to enjoy your ham sandwich. I hope you're following that. It's a bit random Federal.
No, I do. No, that makes sense. I love the analogy. Yeah. Well, I guess the obvious next question to ask is about partners then. So how are people explaining these intimate, and not just if you can't get an erection, but this idea that you don't want to have sex in a relationship, which obviously is a big part of most people's relationships. Are people, if they are not able to perform, even able to get into relationships, or is that sort of we're not having sex, so we're just friends? And when it comes to the people that obviously reach out to you, is it because they're being pushed by their partner, or is it because of other reasons?
Very much both. I mean, there are a lot of people who are increasingly becoming aware that pornography is causing problems. And thankfully, to programs like this, to having opportunities like this to begin to talk about it. So they're actually beginning to notice and beginning to have that awareness. For others, it is partners going, hold on, there's something going on here. Sex was great when we met. What's happening now? I think the things for many people when they get into a new relationship, because it's all new, it's all fantastic, it's all amazing, then probably the sex is going to be great. So it may well be for many people that in the early part of a relationship, They're very happy without the porn. The person they are with is the chili sauce, so it's going great. I do realise we're comparing partners to ham sandwiches, which they may not be happy about.
I think that's great.
As,
Let's keep this going.
but as the familiarity kicks in, and we all know that. I mean, there are so many books out there, aren't there? Programs out there, podcasts out there about keeping sex alive in long-term relationships. Because as familiarity kicks in, we know that begins to affect arousal. So you have to kind of work harder at keeping the spark alive. So for many, unfortunately, I see a lot of guys who are like, well, I just decided it was probably the wrong relationship because I didn't fancy them as much anymore. So they move on to finding a chili sauce somewhere else, rather than recognizing nobody, no matter how gorgeous they are, is ever going to be able to compete with porn, ever. And I think that's the challenging thing. And a lot of guys will say to me, but I prefer the porn to partner sex. And you said that from one of the statistics at the beginning. Yeah, no partner is ever going to be able to compete with porn. Even if you're in a poly relationship, you've got 4 or 5 partners, that's nothing compared to what you can find online. Nothing is going to compete with that. And if you'd rather have your sex life wholly with pornography, then great, no problem. As long as you're not breaking the law, you're not hurting anybody, it's fine. But of course, as you said, sex is such an important part of so many relationships that you're kind of sacrificing an awful lot of other stuff as well. The intimacy, the connection, the fun, the laughter. There's so many other things that go on in a sexual relationship, not just the orgasm.
Well, it's strange, isn't it? Because it's almost the way of the world now. Like you said, how many people are having real world connections with friends versus they're sat there on TikTok and things. I read something the other day about, in the and even in the 90s, or basically before Instagram, people were very happy to go on holiday in this country, to go to Wales or to go to Bournemouth or to go to Cornwall. But now, because of Instagram, we can see what Dubai is like. And it's like, back then people didn't even know what Dubai was. But now you see all of these holidays. So, well, if we're going on holiday, it has to be a 5-star beach resort and we have to all look like Instagram models to go there, rather than going to Blackpool, which now would seem, almost laughable. But people before did that. They didn't know any better. And it's interesting how much screens have really changed every aspect of our lives and what we see as good. And I don't think really for the better.
No, I mean, it's about balance, isn't it? I mean, I would absolutely not want to ban. We wouldn't be having this conversation, frankly, if it wasn't for screens. That's what enables us to do it. So there are connections that we can have that just simply would not be available without that. And an awful lot of the apps that are out there now for dating, people are meeting, they're falling in love because of these things. So I mean, it's brilliant. It's about balance, and I think it's one thing using the internet perhaps for inspiration, but when it becomes aspirational instead, I think that's where we have the problems, where anything else compared to that is not good enough. So by all means, be inspired by what you see on the internet and get nice ideas, things you want, but don't make it the only goal. And I think, of course,
that's a great line.
Sex.
We should put that somewhere. Inspiration, not aspiration. I like that.
It's not just about going to Dubai. You want a partner to go to Dubai with you. So it's not good enough for you. So just have your own inspiration that comes from maybe watching porn. You've got to make sure your partner shares it as well. It's got to be mutual.
So one of the things you just said, which I, totally agree with because it's a free world, is, if you want your sexual relationship to just be between you and porn and you don't want partnered sex, like that, I'm not going to force you to have sex with anyone. However, I guess the only problem with that is it is an addiction, and addiction usually means you need a harder and harder material to get the same high. And that's something that I have read about with this addiction in particular, is you keep needing more extreme things, more tabs, more novelty, and it can take you to almost, for some people, I guess, an illegal place, or at least very on the cusp of where that consent line is, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. First thing I want to say, just a point of clarity, in case listeners want to know, we don't know that it's an addiction yet. We know it's a problem. We know it's a compulsive disorder. We know that many people struggle with their pornography use. Whether or not that term addiction is accurate or not is something that is still in debate. But I mean, frankly, I don't care whether you call it an addiction or compulsion, whatever you want to call it. We know it's a problem that many people struggle from. About 40% 0.6% of the UK population, in fact.
Wow.
But one of the characteristics of the problem, like an addiction, is that many people say they experience escalation. So they need more and more in order to have the same kind of impact. And for some people, that does mean, unfortunately, straying into illegal areas. And that, of course, can bring all sorts of problems to many people. For others, it's about going to paid for sites. And that may be going onto the webcam stuff, going onto OnlyFans, losing a lot of money that they just simply can't afford on this. For others, it's going offline. So it may start as pornography, but then it becomes the kind of adult chat lines, it becomes the webcams, it becomes visiting sex workers in some way, or the adult apps. And then if for people in a relationship, you've got real flesh on flesh infidelity, as well as often a lot of money being spent. So a lot of people are reaching out for help when it is escalated to a point that it really is an issue now. So, and sometimes I'll hear people say, well, pornography isn't the issue, it's the money I'm spending on OnlyFans that's the problem. Or
Right.
vanilla pornography is not a problem, but I've now got into this really, really hardcore stuff, and that really bothers me, and it's kind of against my values, and I don't want to be kind of looking at that. Sometimes it's not, and I sometimes think pornography is a bit like a gateway drug. It's like a lot of people can smoke a joint and not have too many problems with that, and don't really see it as a major issue. But if they end up escalating that from it, then it is a problem.
Right, that makes sense. I wanted to ask you, just before we move on to some tips-based questions, in your opinion, because obviously you're at the front line of this, in my opinion, people have become much more aware of this. As I say, you are here on this podcast, not because I ever thought I would do an episode about porn, but because this issue came up in 3 or 4 episodes that were completely unrelated to porn. So it was becoming an issue. And I have obviously listened to other podcasts and seen other YouTube videos where this has come. So I feel like I'm aware of it. And I feel like maybe generally the society is becoming more aware of it. However, we balance that out with porn is getting an AI infusion at the moment. I'm told, you can create your own avatars, create your own porn or whatever. I know that there's a big jump to try and get people to use the VR headsets, so you feel like you're there. So at the same time, people are becoming more aware. Porn is getting an upgrade. Where do you see it going? Do you think the situation is going to improve or get worse? What would be your finger in the air feeling on it?
I hope that we're getting enough education in place that by the time it gets to all of that, we will have more balance. I think I'll take you back a few centuries, if I may, Lewis.
Okay.
You may or may not know this, but when, I don't know who it was, but some wonderful person in history created the crossword. They thought the crossword could be the end of family life as we knew it. Because, I know it's mad, because people would spend all their time completing these crosswords. They were banned from newspapers because this was just going to be an absolute disaster to society. Well, gaming has come on rather since then, hasn't it? Let's face it, it really has come on. Of course, a more recent one was the television was going to be the end of society as we knew it. Nowadays, families long for a night in front of the telly as a family rather than being in separate rooms on the internet.
Yeah.
Things change, things move on. I think the fact that AI, I think, is absolutely amazing and terrifying at exactly the same time. I can't get my head around it at all, but it could be amazing. It can be terrifying. So I think all these changes, we need to absorb them. We need to accept them. We need to see it as human progress. But with all of that, we have to recognise we have choices and there are consequences. To every choice we make, there is a consequence. If you choose to be in a committed, long-term, monogamous relationship, you're making a sacrifice. Yeah? To a whole load of other stuff you could have had. You're making a sacrifice. If you have children, you're making a sacrifice. If you don't have children, you choose not to, you're making a sacrifice. If you choose to spend the whole of your life single and enjoying every sexual variety you possibly can, you're making a sacrifice. So I think ultimately it boils down to choice. But I suppose my concern at the moment is that a lot of young people don't have informed consent, which we talk about as being, one of the basic human rights, because we're not doing enough education on it. So what I feel really strongly about is getting a lot more education out there about pornography, the possible potential negative consequences of it, and addiction, compulsion is just one of those, so that young people can actually make an informed choice about how they want to live their lives.
Yeah. Well, that brings us so nicely onto tips. And the first question I'm going to ask you on sort of tips is, what are your tips for parents to help navigate this when they have teens? So I've got 3 kids. So I've got 2 little ones, but I've also got a stepson who is 16. And I think he must have been about 13. And I had a conversation with him about porn. And I was like, look, I don't expect you to never watch it, but what I don't want is for you to get to a point where you think that that is real and that you would rather do that than be with someone else and explore this yourself. Like, I don't want it to be, I'm not banning it, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I want you to just be careful about it. So I had that conversation, and we haven't spoken about it again. Obviously, he didn't want to have that conversation. But what would be your tips for parents?
I mean, absolutely have those conversations. And we have those conversations around Alcohol Day, and we know, I mean, at least as a society, we do whatever we can to stop young people having access to alcohol. And I believe very strongly in the age verification bills that are going through government at the moment for that porn sites have to ensure and regulate, for age verification. I think we need to have those conversations and it's accepting that, this is fairly normal. And please, with girls as well, I know I'm saying that this is an issue that predominantly affects men, but we do know that this is affecting women as well. So boys and girls, have those conversations. Don't demonise it, because otherwise you make it even harder for them to come and talk to you if they do have problems in the future. But help them to recognise that there are issues around it. There are a growing number of resources. There's actually an organisation called the Naked Truth Project who do a lot of workshops for parents, and they have kind of a parenting pack for how to have a conversation with your kids. Some of one of the packs that's really good is for younger children, because the problem with waiting until they're 14, 15, 16 is they found it ages ago. Too late, too little, too late. But actually how to have those conversations much earlier with younger children as well. So there are more and more resources being developed all the time for young people. And talk to your school as well. Get into the school, ask the school what they're doing about it, because you made a really important point about your stepson not wanting to talk to you about it. Bless him. I can imagine him cringing like crazy throughout that conversation.
Well, you know what? It's a really odd one, because if I think back to my own childhood, so first of all, I remember being about 5 or 6 years old, and my parents had got me a book on like where babies come from, so I knew all about sperm and stuff. So in that way, they hadn't stigmatized it. But then I remember things like we'd be watching the TV, and a couple would start kissing on the TV, and my mom would be like, "Oh, kissing," and like cover my eyes. And I'm like, so then you started to give me a concept of, it's when people are intimate, that's a bit naughty or something like that, and that's. I don't think she intended to do that, but I don't want to do that with my kids, where it's, I don't want you to ever feel like this is dirty or wrong, but at the same time, I want you to have a healthy relationship with all of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And we tend to talk to children from the biological perspective of making babies. And then we might, in early teens, be talking about contraception, STIs, and underage pregnancy and STIs have dropped considerably over recent years. Porn is safe sex in some respects. So
this is true.
A plus.
In some ways.
But it's, we need to talk not just negatively about it to children, but to be normalising that this is something that is very pleasurable, but it has risks. But there's a growing number of resources out there, and ask what the school are doing and how you can support the school and make sure that it's the same kind of messages coming.
Wonderful. So if someone finds this video, they have found it because they actually think that they have got a bit of a problem with porn and it's affecting their relationship in whatever form, or that they're spending too much money on it, and they've tried to quit and they can't, and they're maybe going a few days or maybe a week and then going back and they just can't seem to quit, what would your advice be?
Firstly, the problem is not you. The problem is probably the way you've been trying to do it. So lots of people try and quit porn without really understanding what's going on underneath. If you've tried on a number of occasions and failed, then there's almost certainly something a bit deeper going on underneath. And that might be about understanding what's happening neurologically in your brain and recognizing that this isn't just about willpower. It's going to take more than that. It may be that there's another unconscious driver that could be low self-esteem, negative images, negative opinions about yourself. Is there a self-talk going on? I'm not good enough, I'll never do this, I've always been weak, or whatever. Or it might be that you're struggling with feeling isolated, low self-esteem, as I said, maybe depression, anxiety. So finding out what's really going on. So it's probably not you that's the problem if you've tried and failed. It's probably you've not been using the right tool, frankly. So, yeah, as you know, Lewis, I'm founder of a not-for-profit organisation called Pivotal Recovery. And Pivotal Recovery is a completely anonymous, safe, online, research-based self-help program. I'm a real nerd for research. So basically, it's a series of podcasts. You listen to the information on the podcast, and then you have a workbook where you can personalize what you've learned. It's what we call a psychoeducational approach. So there's lots of information and advice and lots of very, very practical interventions for how you can not just stop, but stay stopped. Because I guess that's the thing. Most people will have had an experience of stopping for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever. But actually, it's not just about stopping. It's about making sure you've got the tools in place to stay stopped. And what I said earlier, back to that, recovery is not about what you give up. It's about what you take up. And too often people try and stop just with willpower, focusing on what they're not doing and thinking about what you're going to do instead is a critical part of really getting on top of this problem.
I like that. If someone did come to Pivotal and they're like, oh, I'm scared to even Google porn problems, what happens when they get there? Do they have to use their real email address, their real names? What's it like to sign up?
So, yes, you need you can't get anything without an email address these days. You need your email address. It's completely anonymous. It all goes on the system, the back end of the system. We've got a number of different programs now. So we've got our Pivotal Foundations program, which is completely free. So yes, you would just sign up to that and you would then be sent to your email address a passcode, and then you can just log in and do the Foundations course, which is free. If you feel you need more than that, there's a self-help assessment tool on there as well. So you can do the Am I an Addict and kind of find out where you are on the spectrum. We've not mentioned that actually. People get a bit binary. Am I an addict? Am I not an addict? It's a spectrum. Starting with definitely not. It's just recreational and a bit problematic, a bit heavy, causing a few issues, right the way through to kind of fully addicted. My advice always is don't wait until you're right up that other end before you get help. If you think it's beginning to be a bit of an issue, sooner you do something, the better. Pivotal Foundations has really been kind of created for that. If you feel you need more because you know you're further up the other end, then there's the full course, and then you'll need to use it's £95 for the full course. So you need a card or 3 times £35 instalments. So but it's all completely anonymous.
I guess the other question, if someone were interested in doing it, is what kind of feedback do you get from you talked about data? Have you got any statistics on people that are then able to go on and quit or replace or have healthy sex lives, or just testimonials? What are people that have been through the courses saying?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're about 3,000 people have been through the course, and we did a pilot study. So we did a pilot study with Leeds Trent University. So as I said, a bit of a nerd for research. So we did a pilot study so we could measure efficacy, and it's currently the only self-help program in the world with any outcome measures, with any efficacy studies behind it. And you'd expect me to know those statistics off the top of my head, wouldn't you, Lewis? And I don't, but they're all on the website.
And the website. I'll put them in the episode description after this as well. I'll put them in the episode description so people can find them.
It does work, I think, but there's two things here. It's not just about, did it help me to stop? And I think it's about 70%, 80% stopped completely.
Brilliant.
It's also, is my quality of life better? Yeah, do I feel better about myself? Is life better now I've stopped? Or have I stopped and I'm just miserable as sin because I've lost the only thing that gave me any meaning and purpose? And so we don't just measure efficacy in terms of stopping and staying stopped. We measured efficacy in terms of I feel better about myself. I feel confident about my future. I feel confident about maintaining recovery. So we have an ongoing, so we did have the formal pilot study, but we also have an ongoing feedback thing. So people write to us and fill in a survey on an ongoing basis. And 99% feel confident about their ongoing recovery. I think that some people have slips, they have momentary slips, but that doesn't mean you failed. So 99% say, no, now I have got the tools. Now I know what I need to do. I know how to overcome this. And yes, lots of testimonials on the site as well.
On tips, so just have a few more questions for you. What are your tips for partners? So if you think that your partner is, maybe you've checked their internet history and you think that they're watching porn too often, or maybe you think that they're getting into some extreme porns, or maybe, as you were talking about, your partner can't get an erection, or you're just not having sex anymore. What is a good way, without causing any arguments or trouble, to broach this with a partner and say, I'm a bit worried about your porn use?
It is a tricky one, I think. So there is Pivotal for Partners. So that's the other thing I'll say. We have written quite recently Pivotal for Partners. So do listen to that. And the very first episode of that is, how do I know if this is a problem? I think if you're noticing your partner's becoming increasingly withdrawn from you, you're really noticing changes in behaviour that aren't typical. And apart from that, your relationship's really good, then this may be something that you suspect. I think the thing is not to go in with blame and shame, but to go in with curiosity. And if somebody said, no, definitely not, that's not it. I think the next question I would ask is, okay, how would you know if it was? What would be your signs that it was beginning to become a problem? So I don't want to overreact to this. I mean, how would you know that it was? Because this is what I'm noticing, and if it's not to do with that, then that's fine, that's okay. But if you're noticing those problems, then how are we going to address them? If it's an issue and it's not the porn, then how are we going to address those issues? And if it might be the porn, what would be your sign? I think, in my experience, often a very first reaction, and this is so human, the very first reaction is no, me? No, it's not a problem. Leave the door open, because it might be the next day or a couple of days later or a couple of weeks later. You get I think you might have a point. I think maybe it is beginning to be an issue. So yeah, it's kind of gently, without blame or shame.
Fine. So you wouldn't suggest sort of just blocking all of the porn access? Final one, although I think you may have answered this one, but the final question was, so if someone has actually quit porn, but they still can't perform, or they're still anxious in bed, like what should they do then?
Yeah, I think it's like I said, it does take time. It might be that at that point, and certainly on Pivotal Recovery, we talk at length about mindful masturbation in a way that we can't do on this. So there's lots and lots of tips on there. It might be, if you are still struggling for a period of time, that actually you do want to get some face-to-face therapy, or some in-person therapy rather, as so much of it's online now, of course, and actually get some psychosexual therapy to begin to overcome the problem, because it can take time. Some people have decided to use kind of Viagra Connect, just as kind of a bridging tool. You don't want to become dependent on that instead, but that might be a bridging thing that helps you to kind of get your confidence back. But probably if you're still struggling with erections, even though you've given up porn months before, then it's going to be psychological. Like I said earlier, you haven't broken it. That's not a thing. It's more likely to be psychological, and that's probably the point at which in-person therapy or person-to-person therapies can be a better option.
But I guess the good thing that you are saying throughout all of this, as someone is listening to this and is worried, is everything seems to be fixable. There's not sort of
Absolutely.
well, you've watched too much porn now, you'll never have sex again, or or whatever. Everything seems to be, it might take some work, but you can quit porn if you want to quit porn. You can have a healthy sex life if you want to have that. It just might take some work. There's no such thing as sort of too late, you've broken it.
Absolutely, it's never too late. And if you're telling yourself that, that's a cognitive distortion. And that is
Right.
going to be your biggest block to recovery. I've worked with, 50-year-olds, 60-year-olds who've been exposed to pornography and watching it, paper version, then online, since they were 10, 11, 12. Yeah, and are in full recovery, enjoying the sex life. Enjoying a person-on-person sex life is often one of the key motivators for people giving up porn. It's because you want a better sex life. And I think a lot of people think their sex life will be rubbish if they give up porn. But actually, what most people experience is that it is much, much better. And it doesn't matter whether you've been using porn for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. It doesn't matter if you're the 40-year-old virgin who's only ever had sex with porn. In all of those situations, I've been working in this I've been a therapist for 30 years, specialising in this for about 16, 17 years. And absolutely you can recover from this.
Well, that brings me on nicely to the final section of questions, which is just about you. So what drew you into specializing in this area? What made you think that's what I want to do when I grow up?
Yeah, what made me imagine going to your careers advisor saying, "I'm going to do this." My story is that I was in IT. Actually, I was in computing. Worked almost exclusively with men for many, many years. Anyway, then when I stopped that career to have my family, that's when I started training to be a therapist, and that was 30 years ago. And so general psychotherapy, I worked in alcohol and drugs for a while. Then I became a sex therapist, so I'm an accredited psychosexual therapist as well. And I started hearing about this thing called sex addiction. Gosh, must be nearly 20 years ago now. So it was before the smartphone. And to me, it just kind of, it clicked. All that I knew about kind of drug and alcohol, and then what I'd learned in psychosexual therapy, I could kind of see how these concepts fitted together. Plus, I was working with some clients at the time, though they weren't using that language. That was definitely what they were struggling with. So, yeah, I started working with it more and more. I was really curious about it, started specialising in it, was really, as I was seeing more clients, nobody is talking about this. So I wrote books. So I've got 4 books out there that I've written on sex and porn addiction, started writing the books, set up the practice. It was just me at first. Now the Laurel Centre is 25 therapists all around the UK. We've also got offices in Singapore. We provide a service in Singapore and also in the Netherlands as well. And then most recently set up Pivotal Recovery, the not-for-profit. So, yeah, I mean, it's a booming business. Wow. Unfortunately, it's a booming business because we need so much more work done in this area. But yeah, kind of fell into it by accident. But it was hugely rewarding being able to see the real change that this can make in people's lives.
And what are some of the changes that you have seen over time? So, for example, is it that there's been a sharp decline in people with sex addiction and now they've just gone to a porn addiction? And how has porn become more of an issue over time? Like, what are sort of the trends that you've seen throughout this career?
Yeah, so I mean, the smartphone, of course, and getting porn on the smartphone was the absolute kind of game changer. I guess when I first started, it was, I don't know if people remember Michael Douglas, famous actor who kind of came out as being one of the first sex addicts. It tended to be wealthier men, middle-aged, wealthier men who could afford sex workers. That was the general addiction. You couldn't really get addicted to paper porn because you can't turn the pages fast enough. It just isn't that bad. So increasingly, as porn became more widely available, sort of seeing more and more people presenting as porn addicts rather than it being sex, but also younger and younger and younger. And I think there's 2 reasons for that. I think one is simply they've been brought up with porn and it's just the availability. And of course, it's free. This is an addiction that doesn't have to cost you any money. But the other reason is I think men are so much more aware of their mental health now than they used to be. And I think younger men are feeling much more confident saying, look, I've got an issue, I've got problems, I need to get some help. So I think generally younger men have got a huge amount of self-awareness. Mental health services are slowly improving to men. But certainly, I think men are more willing to kind of reach out for help and kind of, demand some help for the issues that are affecting them.
That's good that men are becoming more self-aware and getting help. Because my final question on this section is just I can't remember who I was talking to on an episode recently. Basically, they were talking about therapy, and they were saying that therapy might not be as effective for men as women, simply because a lot of therapy is geared maybe more towards the female needs of needing to feel safe and loved, whereas actually what a lot of men need is to feel powerful or respected. And that the argument was, maybe therapy was not working because it wasn't gender specific by the patient. But what have you found in helping men and how men like to be helped? And do they, as you say, are they better doing something sort of not speaking to someone and doing it on the computer themselves, or are they better in person speaking to someone? What have been some of the trends you've seen with men and how they like to receive help?
I suppose we're a bit unique at the Laurel Centre because our clients are it's 99% men, and obviously some partners are female, but we work with a lot of gay clients as well. So our therapy services have always been aimed at men. I think there is a difference. I think it needs to be more pragmatic, more psychoeducational. So at the Laurel Centre, we do a lot of recovery courses and recovery groups, and we do an online one that's 7 weeks, and we do a 6-day residential as well. And it's what we call psychoeducational. So we talk about the neuroscience. We draw pictures of brains. We explain exactly what's happening up here. We do the psychoeducational piece. We have lots of very practical relapse prevention strategies. We set homework to be done, exercises to be completed. It's not just sitting around talking about your relationship with your mother. I mean, that might be.
You know what? That as a man, that appeals to me. Like I like knowing like what's going on in my brain and stuff. So that makes sense.
Absolutely. And I think talking about some of the other stuff, and, for some people, of course, there has been a history of trauma, there's been a history of abuse, there's history of issues within the family of origin, and those things do need to be explored. But it's making sure it's happening kind of at the right time and when a client's ready and in a language that makes sense. So I think so often my experience working with men, and maybe this is because my brain's more wired up like a man's brain, I mean, I don't think they're uniquely different, is I want to know the rationale. If you want me to talk about my mum when I'm presenting with this problem, what's that got to do with her? I need the rationale. Tell me why, explain to me why. When I get it, I'll go, oh, okay, yeah, right, okay, and do it. So I think it's about really explaining the logic and the rationale behind it.
Right, so final 2 questions. So if there was one thing you wanted men or anyone struggling with porn or intimacy issues to take away from this conversation, what would it be? If they only listened to this one little snippet of what you were going to say, what would you want them to know?
You can have the life that you want to have and take action to grab it now.
Perfect. And if someone wants to take that action, where can they find out more about you? Where would you like to send people? Where can people get started?
I think, first step, probably go to pivotalrecovery.org and you'll find a lot more information about me and about the service there. If you want therapy, very practical, pragmatic, man-style therapy, if you're interested in that or any of the recovery courses, you'll find a link on the Pivotal website to the Laurel Centre as well. So, pivotalrecovery.org.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Paula Hall. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.